Welcome to Burn Book, OT edition, where we respectfully expose toxic habits, spill OTT, and call out anything that's not serving occupational balance. We're your host, I'm Kyrina.
And I'm Linnea.
So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about a really important model that's relatively new in the OT world, and it's called the burn-in model. Linnea, why don't you tell us who the creators of this model are, what their names are, and kind of give us a beginning aspect of what the model means to somebody who's never heard it before.
Yeah, so the creators of this model are Rhiannon Crisp and Michelle Lucan, and they collaborated together on this to really emphasize what burnout is, and it's become so normalized in the world of mental health and OT and everything, so they decided to make the burn-in model for it.
And to me, personally, before I had heard of this model, I immediately thought, oh, this basically sounds like my life, and it sounds like what I feel every time finals come up, which is soon, unfortunately, because we're about to hit that part in the semester. And I think that one of the things that really resonated with me with this model is that I feel like I could apply it to my life specifically. And I think a lot of models you can apply to your own life, but this one I just felt like really called us out.
Yeah.
I think it was cool to be able to look at it in a way that fits my life, but also fits future clients' lives.
Yeah.
Alright, so we're going to talk about what exactly the burn-in model is. So one of the big key things the creator tried to push is the concept of alignment. And when you're burnt out, that means you're misaligned. And so how really did they explain it and what that means to be misaligned in your life?
So misalignment can look a lot like something else that's called occupational imbalance. So whenever all of our meaningful activities in our life are kind of skewed, or maybe we're not participating in them, or we're really struggling in maybe one aspect of life or all aspects of life, that's where misalignment can really occur.
I agree, and I feel like that this model really emphasizes the idea that burnout is gradual. It doesn't just happen overnight. You don't wake up and you're fine one morning and then the next day you're burnt out and you're just dead. And so even though it does feel like that, it does feel like that. I feel like a lot of times it just happens, and I think a lot of times it does feel like it just happens overnight, but it doesn't. It builds gradually, and I think that this model really is able to identify how it builds and is kind of preventative as well as being able to create an intervention from it. And so I guess what I mean by that, because that doesn't really make sense. So
right.
What I mean by this is, for example, if you have a client who's burnt out, this OT can use this model and kind of look at the client's life and what went wrong, what caused burnout, what needs to be fixed, and then you can use it in an intervention lens. And if you're looking at it more from a preventative lens, you can use it on clients to make sure that you're using routines and interventions and strategies in their daily life that ensure they're not likely to burn out. And so not only can you fix burnout when it's already happened, but you can stop it before it gets so extreme that you're like, on the floor crying.
Right. Before we go any further into that, I feel like we should talk about the elements of it.
Yes.
Because that does really paint a picture of maybe what that misalignment looks like, or what alignment looks like. If you're thriving in life and so happy and you're not in grad school.
Please share your routine if you're doing that, guys.
So we'll start with the foundational elements. For the rocks, those are going to be your boundaries. So maybe we go on walks a lot together, so maybe saying hey, do you want to go on a walk? And Kyrina's like, no, I've had the worst day ever, how am I going to tell her this? I don't want to go do anything, I'm tired, and I've been saying yes too much. For her, that boundary would be, hey, thank you so much for inviting me, but I really can't go today. Just saying no to things, we don't always have to say yes. Without those rocks, without that boundary for our flame, which we'll talk about later, fire's gonna be everywhere, and we don't need fire everywhere. Things burn down, things catch on fire.
Fire is where it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, we don't need that. So next we have the sticks and logs. These are gonna represent the personal factors in your life. So maybe what you enjoy, those meaningful occupations, activities, maybe that support system, the people that you have around you. This is also really important because it is what makes you you. So, and it's different for everyone. So Kyrina's sticks and logs look far different from mine. And so keeping that in mind too. The next is ash. Ash represents death, but also your legacy that you left behind. So ash in the burn-in model represents, okay, this is the end of life. This is where the flame ends. Like, there's not really any flame coming back after that. So we have ash. But not just saying, okay, this is the end, but also building up to that. How do you want to be remembered? What is your legacy going to be? And what did you leave behind? That also leads us to wind and rain. For people like me, that sounds terrible. Wind, horrible. Rain, also terrible. But some people like rain.
I love the rain.
And so Kyrena mentioned, like, the rain is also an opportunity for growth. And Rhiannon and Michelle also do a really good job explaining that the rain is also a great opportunity for growth, and wind can also bring shifts to your situation. So I think it definitely depends on how you look at it, and we should be looking at it as rain is growth and wind can shift your situations.
Yeah.
Next we have coal. This is the dreaded burnout. We do not want coal. We want the coal in the
like
trash.
Christmas. You do not want coal in your stocking.
No coal here. We do not want it. Next we have smoke, and this represents misalignment. So maybe your flame is really smoky right now, and you've closed the door, you're not opening the door, and your house is filling with smoke. You can't breathe, can't see, and can't do anything.
Which is what burnout feels like.
Yeah. And so smoke just represents that misalignment in this model, which I think is really big. And then next we have the embers. So any kinds of ember, there's not really any other word for that, coming off of your flame. These are the gifts back to the
It's been a long day.
These are the gifts back to the world. So maybe if you're volunteering, you're starting a podcast, you're just doing something a little bit extra to give back to the world.
Calling us out.
Yeah, calling us out, you know, all the usual things. Those are your gifts to the world. How are you contributing to the world? And then, all in all, we do have the flame. The most important part, if you ask me, and there's an inner flame and an outer flame. The inner flame includes the being, belonging, and doing. So how am I being in this situation? How am I being in life? How am I belonging? What am I doing with other people? How am I belonging in my roles? And then for doing, what are you doing in your life? What are you striving for? What do you want to do? And then all of those add up to the outer flame, which is becoming. And we'll put a picture of that in a little bit.
Insert here.
Insert here. But how are you becoming? What's the end goal? What is the next goal? What's the next step? For some people, we try to think so far ahead that we're like, I don't know what I want to do
especially
in 20
years.
Girls. Yeah, especially as anxious little girlies over here. What am I doing next? I don't know, and quite frankly, don't care right now.
Yeah.
So I think just even saying, okay, becoming, what am I becoming for tomorrow? That's really all of the elements. Do you have anything to add?
I don't think so. I think you did a great job explaining it. One of the things that, you're welcome. One of the things that stands out with me, kind of when you were explaining that, is the boundaries, because as a people pleaser, that is something I really struggle with, and I think that a lot of people do struggle with that, and I think a lot of times there's a really fine line, at least in my experience, between saying no and setting those boundaries, and also keeping up with the tasks that you have in life. And what I mean by that is, at work, for example, I'm going to want to go above and beyond, and I'm going to want to accomplish so much and do so much and make an impact on the world, and I think that's such a great thing to do. But when you're doing it to the point that you're getting burned out, I think that's when you're crossing over that very fine line, and you're doing too much. Yeah, not talking from experience. But I think it's just really hard to keep that, and I think also it is different for everybody. I think that you and me would have different ideas of where we would get burned out, and I think that if you and me were to do the exact same schedule, the exact same routine, we would handle it very differently. And I think that that's one of the things that's so special about this specific model is, while yes, it does help us identify burnout, it's going to be so unique to every individual that's applying this model to their lives.
Yeah.
And I also think it's very cool that we can use this model as not only students, but when we become OT practitioners, you can use it to recognize yourself when you're becoming burned out, but also in your clients or your family and friends. You can see and use it to identify maybe when burnout's happening or when there's not alignment and it's just really imbalanced, an occupational imbalance, which we talk about all the time in OT school.
Yeah.
And it's so important to have occupational balance, and I feel like it's not something that we push in a society today, which sucks because we need that.
I also think that like all of this, like what we're talking about, is so empowering.
Mm-hmm.
And it empowers other people as well.
For
it
sure.
empowers the user of the model. It
Mm-hmm.
empowers, if the OT is the one using it for a client,
Mm-hmm.
it empowers the OT as well, because they're getting this extra insight into the person's
Yes.
life and seeing all of these elements.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're such a holistic
profession
profession
and world.
that empowering is something
Yeah.
we want to do, and it helps with advocating and all
For
of
sure.
that. So definitely, yeah.
Yeah, period. I agree. I think as a society, we really normalize burnout. And I think that it's hard, and this model really not only empowers us, but also validates us. Like, I know as a student, sometimes I feel like maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I'm not doing enough. And I think that it's very important to realize that burnout is unfortunately, such a common thing.
Yeah.
And I think that this model allows us to identify that and also feel seen a little bit. Because, I don't know, it's just hard whenever we live in a society that's go, 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 which can be so great, but also can lead to burnout, which is not great. So I think that's a cool
dumpster
thing.
fire.
Yes.
Okay, so now that we've went through all of the elements and really what the burn-in model is and what it's founded on, let's talk about how OTs specifically can use this.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that we had talked about the college example.
Yes. We are college students, so I feel like this is a fitting
We
example
are
to
grad
use.
students, so
Full course load.
full disclosure, not about us. Probably just something we've seen.
Yeah. But hypothetically, we would imagine being a college student would be a full course load, trying to maintain a social life.
Probably. Just probably.
Yeah, trying to maybe working, maybe trying to still see your family once in a while.
Make friends.
Yeah, not spend all your time in the books. It would be nice, hypothetically. No need to get personal. But in all seriousness, say we're burnt out as college students. This is going to affect our occupational. It obviously. Burnout, occupational imbalance, it's going to affect our day-to-day routine. We might be having weird sleep schedules, we might be skipping meals, we might be dropping meaningful activities, not focusing on self-care, and that's going to be where burnout is showing up. And so as an OT, you can really look and use this model to identify, okay, what is going wrong with their routines, what's going wrong with their life, and how can we apply this in an intervention to help them and get them to burn in instead of burn out. And so you can do this by restructuring daily routines. You can prioritize meaningful occupations, educate on energy conservation, because I know it's very easy as grad students to just not sleep. Yes, and so introduce coping strategies, which is a big one. I think we all could use some better coping strategies and self-care. And there's so many more. That's not all of them, but I think that's just a great way you can apply that. And also, even in clients that you're not at full burnout yet, just using it to prevent future burnout would be a good way to live, laugh, love.
Live, laugh, love. I do have something I want to add. So, obviously, sometimes we're always wanting to keep kind of a model or frame of reference in the back of our head when we're treating, documentation and all of that.
Yes.
So, what do you think about, let's say I have a client who we're working on hands.
Sure.
Hands, yeah. And I'm realizing that maybe they're burnt out, maybe from what they're telling me. And so one of their goals becomes they're burnt out with their job. And so even like incorporating this into just practice in general as a model, maybe coming alongside of the other models. What do you think about that?
I think that's great. I think a lot of times in the OT world, especially in OT school, we're taught a lot of models and theories. It's very heavy on that. And I think that...
Heavy on the models.
Yes, for sure. And I think one of the hardest things I've had as a student is experiencing how, like, yes, I understand the model, but how am I applying this to real life? Like, taking it out of the textbook and putting it into real life.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at practice and you're like, okay, I'm doing this intervention with my client, you're like, wait, this actually aligns with this model.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times the models really overlap. And I think you can use a combination of models. Like, for example, one of my favorite ones is Moho, because I feel like I love the client-centered holistic view of it. And I think that applying that and also using the burn-in model to treat somebody would be a great way to approach somebody who's working on hands and you notice they're burnt out, but we also need to look at hands and maybe even a biomechanical approach, because you know, it is hands and that's very biomechanical. And so I think it's definitely normal to use all types of models. And I think one of the hardest things I've struggled with is just being able to identify like how exactly to apply the specific model to actual intervention. And I think that's one of the things I personally love about the burn-in model is I feel like it's, I wouldn't say easy to apply, but very understandable to apply, very practical in pretty much everybody's life. It doesn't fit just one type of client.
Yeah. Slight disclaimer for all of our professors, we have been listening about the models.
We have.
So Kyrena, obviously, for our podcast, we're big on the OTT, the hot takes of OT, yes. All things OT student, yes. All things OT. So what do you think about like the hot takes of this model? Is this model helpful or is it calling us out? Maybe both? Yeah. What do you think about that?
I personally think a little bit of both. I think that, like I said before, our society really does just normalize burnout. Yeah. And I think that in a way this model slightly calls it out and is like, okay, this isn't
respectfully
normal. Respectfully, yeah. For sure, respectfully, yeah. And much needed. It needs to be called out. And I think as well as calling us out and saying, okay, maybe a lot of us aren't living a life that is balanced. I feel like a lot of us are unknowingly, maybe, or knowingly, living a very unaligned life that has caused us to burn out and maybe not even realize that we've gone so far out of alignment. And I think that this model not only respectfully calls us out, but also allows us to be helped. And I think one of the things I really like is it doesn't feel like it's targeting the person and saying, no, you're wrong, you're doing this wrong. It's saying, it's okay, this is what we can change. And so I think that it's just saying the way of life is not aligned and there's nothing that you as a person are doing wrong. You just aren't balancing your occupations in the way that might benefit you to the fullest. Okay, Lydia, so now that we've talked a little bit about the burn-in model, what it is, what it means, are there any key takeaways?
What it is, what it isn't.
Yeah, what it is, what it isn't. Are there any key takeaways that you really feel like resonated with you personally as an OT student?
I would say that looking at this model and throughout our conversation, just a huge theme is alignment.
For sure.
And that's what the whole model is about, is realigning, maybe aligning for the first time, all of those occupations, all of the life balances and all of that. So that's definitely a large takeaway that really stuck with me. And then also remembering that your flame isn't always going to be this big, bright, and beautiful flame. Sometimes it's going to be very dim and it might be the size of a little needle in a haystack. And that's okay, because it's still there. But we're still burning, and we're not going to burn out. I agree. That's something that is really big in our society. Is like, we're not going to burn out completely.
Yeah.
You're still burning. It might be a tiny little ember, but you're here.
It can grow.
It can grow. And I even think that with all of the factors in life, like those are our lighter fluid.
Right.
Throw them on there. Get your support system close to you. And so I think that's another huge takeaway. And then also that it's just for everyone.
Yeah, for sure.
OTs, PTs, even people that aren't in any of those professions, that aren't in a healthcare profession. I think everyone needs to know about this model because
it's very applicable.
It does cause you to take a look into your own life and even the lives of others that you're close to and be like, wow, I'm really struggling, or, you know, non-judgmentally, wow, that person is really unaligned. So I think that just knowing that it's not for just one population of people, it's not for just OTs to use with their clients, it's definitely for everyone.
I agree. I think that for me personally, one of the key takeaways is I am a visual learner, so seeing the model itself of the flame and being able to apply that visually really helped me, because I feel like, kind of along the lines of what you said, if your flame might not always be this big bonfire, sometimes it might be barely a candle, like you said. And so I think a lot of times life does get hard and you might be trying so hard to do everything right and to stay aligned, and you're still burning. You're not gone, you're not burned out yet. Like, I mean, you might be a little burnt out, but you're still flickering. And I think that I liked the visual of like the wind and the rain and everything that affects that flame, because not everything in life is something that we can control. And so I think looking at it that way of like, sure, my flame is pretty small right now, but you know, it can in a split second grow so much bigger. And I think that almost gives me like hope in a way, because it's like, even though you might be in a really hard season of life where you're just feeling like your flame is really like dim, it shows that it can change and things do get better, and it's not like this forever, and there are ups and downs in life. And I think it's a beautiful representation of burnout and occupational imbalance in general and life, period. And that is a wrap on today's Burn Book OT edition. If you feel
if you feel burned out,
if you feel personally called out, same.
And if you have your life together, please send your routine.
Please, like, immediately, because we need help. In all seriousness, though, I can't talk. In all seriousness, though, remember that your occupations should support your life and not slowly burn you out until you're barely a candle. So,
don't stop burning. Bye.
Bye. End scene.
That was awesome. We're leaving it.
Bye.
And now for some bloopers.
I'm gonna start it now. That way I'm not let it out.
Your host.
I'm Kyrina. We're gonna talk about the Burn Book model. Burn Book
Okay,
model.
let's.
Today's hot take is the burn-in model.
Yeah, I can't.
Called the burn-in model.
Yeah.
So.
So, definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Period. I'm gonna have to cut this part out because I had a point and I forgot it. Okay, so we're gonna apply it now to real life so that you can see. I don't know how to start. Okay, why don't you say?
Right. I forgot what I said.